Hello and welcome to Careers Talks Live with Max from the Young Project, part of Trentbridge Community Trust. And today we are lucky enough to have Fred Morris here from Nottingham Forest Community Trust. How are you doing, Fred?
I'm not bad at all.
Good, good. So if we can, we'll get straight into it then. So what is your job title and what does that mean? What do you do?
Okay, so I'm the education, part of the education department, and I'm an education tutor. And as part of my daily role, I deliver BTECs in sport and a few other programs for the trust um, to young people ranging from 16 to 18 years old. We also do some of the outreach programs, so we'll go into prisons and deliver coaching qualifications to prisoners who are about to leave prison, so that they've got a positive outcome. So generally, my role it's mainly a teaching role. I do get to do a bit of football coaching, and also get to take the teams away to various other clubs across the football league, especially the northern teams. Go up to Leeds quite a lot. We go up to sort of like the Yorkshire teams and a few of the southern teams, not too many of them.
Awesome. So yeah, I think that's quite an important point to cover as well. The fact that a lot of like sports clubs have a community trust element, which is basically like a charitable element, and that doesn't necessarily always mean that it's to do with the sport that they're kind of involved in. So like, for example, your one, you don't necessarily do all football, do you?
No, not at all. I think overall, if you consider like a 36-hour week, I think just over a third of that will be football delivery or to do with football. The rest of that will be coaching or teaching, or that will be working with the various other projects the trust does.
Awesome. So again, I think it's quite an unconventional kind of career, and maybe not one which is like marketed or that people are aware of. So how did you kind of get into that? How did you kind of progress to that? What was your route in to get into where you are?
So I came through. It's a bit of a weird one with the community trust because you can come in from pretty much any angle that you want. I came in from the teaching background, so I did a degree and a teaching qualification. I taught in schools for a bit, and then I got really interested in what the trusts are doing, and then I applied for a job, and then I got it. But you can come from a coaching point of view. So the thing is with 16 education, you don't have to be a qualified teacher. You just have to have time-based experience or work-based experience. So if you've coached for a long time, say a couple of years, and you've got your various FA level 1s, level 2s, and level 3s, you can come in from the coaching perspective and teach from your experience. Although now the industry is starting to expect like some level of teaching qualifications. The basic one is the PETL. It's called PETL, which is preparing to teach in the lifelong sector, and that's a week-long course. And at the top end, you might be expected to have a PGC, which is your postgraduate teaching certificate, which will enable you to teach in secondary and universities, colleges across the board. So there's a wide range of there's a lot of ways of coming into work for community trusts.
Awesome. So we've got a question in the chat which says, do you find your degree useful in your current job?
Absolutely. I did a sports degree, and I get to practice it every day, especially being a PE teacher, essentially a PE teacher. We deliver the BTEC sport. So I did a degree in coaching and sports science, and I love my sports science, and I'm very passionate about my coaching, and I'm just quite glad I'm in a position where I can teach it. Although I would say I'm a rugby player through and through, but I am working in a football club, which I don't mind at all because coaching is so fun.
Awesome. So you've mentioned, you might have covered this already in what you've been saying about like qualifications and stuff. Are there any particular qualifications that you need for your job? You mentioned like the petal, and you've got like a PGCE or whatever. What qualifications do you kind of have? Maybe ones that you haven't mentioned, and what qualifications do you need to do your role?
Like I said earlier, it's very much experience based. I've got a lot of coaching qualifications alongside. Those are from like evenings spent volunteering with local clubs. Obviously, because I said I'm from a rugby background, I had to do a lot of work on my own back and go and learn football, go and learn the coaching side of it, and get my qualifications. If you were from a football background, what I'd say is get the minimum is your FA level 2. And then from that, you just get some experience coaching. Maybe you'd go out and coach local, like say under 16s or something, or maybe younger age groups. Get yourself that experience, even if it's just voluntary. And from there, you can go on and start to migrate towards the classrooms, because there's a lot of football clubs. It's not just the big clubs, it's just Nottingham Forest and County and Nottingham doing it. Like for example, Calverton, the local clubs are doing this. So go out, get your experience, and start working towards the educational side. And as I said, the petals is the lowest level, and it's a 1-week course. Very easy. It's literally, here's how you teach, here's how you assess teaching, and you do a little micro teach, and then you get a grade, and then you pass. It's literally a week's worth of course. But yes, from a minimum level, that's what we'd expect from a new entry. A lot of the coaches we have, especially a lot of the coaches, especially the applicants, they'll have coached for a couple of years, and there's anything. The teaching qualifications are more of like a cream. They're more of like what's expected, but they really go off what the coaching experience you have, especially with working with children or young adults who come from difficult backgrounds, because a lot of the community trust stuff is to do with people who've come out of school and not done very well in GCSEs, or you might have older adults who come back and want to learn a bit more, and they want to learn in like a sport environment.
Right. So I guess in terms of getting that initial experience, or like, because you mentioned that was like one of the most important things, like getting into coaching and stuff. Is there a particular thing? Could you just apply from that out of the blue, or would that be a case of like volunteering at a club, for example, and then kind of working your way onto a coaching course? Or is that like a sort of thing you can literally just apply for?
Well, you can actually go on to the level 1 without the FA level 1 without having any coaching qualification, coaching experience. So if you work with primary school kids, it's mainly aimed at primary school kids, but it will give you a little bit of experience, like for example, how to run a session, how to get what you want from a session. So the FA level 1 is basically where you start. You can apply for it off the bat if you've got the money, because you usually pay for the course, attend it, and then hopefully pass. And you can do that without experience. So it's something you can build from without having to go and get voluntary experience. It does help, absolutely does help, because there's nothing like leading your own first group, because that sometimes can be a baptism of fire, sometimes can be the best experience you've ever had. So start with your FA level 1 and then work from there. They are fairly expensive. The FA level 1 you're looking at £300 to £400, but if that's where it helps working with a local club. or a local youth club, etc. It doesn't have to be football. There's a lot of community trusts will give out the FA level 1 as a complimentary, like thank you, thank you for working for us. And that's what we do with our education program as well. We get people up and reward them with coaching qualifications. So it's not just us who'll do that for you. But if you would, it's better off the club paying, or whatever club you're associated with. It's better for them to pay for it than you, obviously.
Amazing. So, I mean, again, I'm kind of always interested by the answers to this question, because quite often there's no easy answer to this one. But what does like a typical day look like for you? I mean, is there such a thing as a typical day?
Well, my days come in like 3 categories really. The teaching days, coaching days, or the game days. And the game days can be a world to themselves. Like we have games in Carlisle that will need a you'll have to leave the city ground at 5 o'clock.
What,
And
in
you
the
won't be back.
morning?
Yeah, you leave at 5 o'clock in the morning. You have a game at 12, and then you're back for around 6. So if you can imagine that, it's a 13-hour day straight away. The teaching days generally start, for me, I'm an early riser, so I'll start 7:30, take it easy for a bit, have a cup of coffee, and then I'll get to the city ground for about 8 o'clock, where I start to put my lessons together, start to plan rooms, etc. And then the students will arrive at 9, and then I'll teach my lesson until about 11:30. They'll have a 2-hour lunch break, 2.5-hour lunch break actually, and we'll meet them back at City Ground. Sorry, not City Ground, at the Forest Sports Zone, where we will do the training in the afternoon, and then that's it. And then I have a Wednesday where it's pretty much coaching, games, and perhaps a bit of teaching, a bit of maths and English, because we help people who've not done not passed the maths and English. So that tends to be done on a Wednesday.
Oh,
yeah. So it's a very varied week. It can be anything really, but yeah.
Keeps it interesting, doesn't it? Keeps it different.
Absolutely, yes. And then some days I'm out trying to get people placement, just a bit like yourself. Especially the Fridays where it tends to be a little bit quiet. Out making phone calls, calling businesses, asking them whether they take someone on as a volunteer. And that's a lot of what I do at the moment, is trying to sort out volunteer placements, so that people can do the qualification and get a bit of work experience.
Always a bonus. So we've got another question in the chat which says, what is your favourite part of your job?
Well, materialistically, the free kit's always nice.
What, sorry?
The free kit's always nice. But from a teaching perspective, we have a lot of kids who come from very rough backgrounds. They've not really done much in school, didn't have the right program. And because we're a little bit more relaxed, we have a lot of support. We often can turn around people's prospects. So, for example, we often get people who come out of school with 3 or 4 GCSEs, and they're all like U's and B's, etc., and D's sometimes. So, and it's very rewarding getting those kind of people through onto their degree. So we're getting through the resets, they're getting through their A levels, and we're getting through their degree as well. So they'll spend a total probably like 6 years with us, and work with them all the way. And the final project, the end product is really rewarding. It's really rewarding getting people through and onto the next stage of their lives.
Yeah, I suppose you see like the whole progression from start to finish, and you get to see that person kind of change before your eyes, which is always nice, especially if you work with them over an extended period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, as I say, but like education is part of what we do, but we do try and um, we try to give people options and the best options that they can get with us, obviously. And some people they exceed all our expectations and they go on and do really well. We've got guys playing football in America at the moment, and they've come on from your normal schools such as Oxford, say in America. Uh, I want to say Massachusetts, but it's not. And we have boys going across the world, and if you went back a couple of years ago, they probably wouldn't have had that opportunity because basically I flunked all their grades. So it's really rewarding seeing all that, especially the progression, as you said, Max. It's great.
Amazing. So, what would you say was like the biggest factor that's helped you in your career journey so far?
Um, I think because I got into university quite late, I I was in the army back in the day when I was 21, and then I left and joined oh, sorry, went to university then. So I think for me, it is more like just realizing what you want. It might take a long time, yeah, and it might take a lot longer than you think. But when you know what you want to do, when I realized I wanted to become a teacher, and then you identify the steps that you need to become a teacher, and then when it all falls into place, there are some hard times because when I was doing my degree, I was 27. Like you think of a 27-year-old, there's a million and one things they would rather be doing than doing, you know, uh, 1,000 word dissertation. So it's, that hard work and that perseverance definitely helps. And once you get your first job, your first interview, I had several interviews. My first interview I was like, oh, I thought I got this. But then a couple of days later, they were like, unfortunately, blah blah blah. But I kept going. And I was really glad that I ended up in Forest. And I was like, what is a rugby player doing at a football club? And then 3 years later, I haven't turned, it's been probably the best decision I've made.
Yeah, I mean, that perseverance and that resilience is such an important characteristic to develop, because with every interview, with every application, you're very unlikely to get the first one that you go for. And it's all about like that build up, and the more that you do, the better that you become, and the more experienced that you are, because ultimately when you go to each one, you then know exactly what to expect, so that it's not kind of all new. Whereas on that first one, you're like, oh my gosh, what are they going to ask, what do I say to all of these questions? And I think no matter how much preparation that you do, it won't properly prepare you for the actual experience of doing it, because it is completely different, and it's an unfamiliar environment, it's an unfamiliar format that you probably won't have done before unless you get practice. But I mean, I think as well, there is a lot more opportunities to practice nowadays. Like in schools, they're doing mock interviews and stuff, which they never used to do, as far as I know. Well, they certainly didn't when I was in school. But yeah, I completely agree with you. It's about that kind of experience, and building the resilience and keeping going, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, and coming from a sporting background, like it's really sport gives you the opportunities to go out and meet people and stuff. And that, like, you don't think about it, but when it comes to the interview, it gives you that level of confidence that you don't, it's very hard to find otherwise. So I was really lucky to have that bit of self-confidence from sport. You're constantly meeting new people, and especially coaching, you've got to be able to get in front of a bunch of randomers and deliver a session. You might be delivering a session to a bunch of 7-year-olds who can barely kick a football, or you might be doing a session to 16 to 18-year-olds who might be going into the local football academy or etc. Okay, so it's just, yeah, as you said, that resilience and that ability to go and deal with that kind of pressure. Yeah, very different, very unique experience as well.
Absolutely. So, kind of on the other foot from that, what would you say was like the biggest obstacle that you faced in your career journey so far, and like what did you do to kind of overcome that? Or
Well, the biggest obstacle I find is this is deciding when to go and do something, um, and like commit to a course. Yeah, and that like it's very hard to commit to something, like and commit to it 100%. Um, for me, going on to do a degree in a teaching qualification later on in life was probably the biggest stumbling block. Because I was thinking, like, I could do something else and I could do something else, but I'm really passionate about sport and teaching, so that's where I want to end it. And it's that having that plan, and kind of focus. Like, it's gonna be a tough couple of years, but I'm gonna get there in the end. And I know it's easy saying that now, but back then it was a very tough decision to make. But understanding where you want to be and how you'll get there is probably the best thing for it in terms of long-term planning and making those big decisions. Because there are some things that, especially a degree, even no matter what age you do it, if it's you're 18 or you're 28, you've got to be able to like kind of relate it to what you want to do in life, and being able to do that definitely helped me in planning and accepting how the difficulties that come along with it.
absolutely. So this you might say that you wouldn't, but if you had to change anything, what would you change?
I do it all when I was younger. Absolutely, do it first time around. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it when you're older. Yeah, I would definitely have done it when I was 18. Then again, I guess I was a rounder person when I was a bit older because of all the experiences I had.
Yeah, I suppose, but I think it's also important that that we say like there's no set age where you have to do anything. Like you don't have to decide exactly what you want to do from like when you're 15 or 16. It doesn't mean that you're a failure or that you don't, just because you're not sure on where you want to go. Like you could decide that at any age, and like you might, as you say, you might look back and say, oh, I wish I did that younger, but then at the time you probably weren't necessarily in the mindset to do that, or you didn't necessarily realize that that was what you wanted to do when you were younger. So I mean, some people kind of change their careers, or they find out what they want to do. They don't find that out until when they're like 40 or something, and that's
Yeah,
fine too. I mean,
absolutely. But then that's hindsight for you. You can always look
that
back at
is
something and say, "Oh, I could do this better. I could do that better." But you got to stick with what you got. Um, but it is definitely easier to change things when you're young. um,
that is true. That is true. But
yeah.
it's never too late. It's never too late.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed like my journey. If you asked me when I was 21 what I was going to be when I was 31, I wouldn't have said Nottingham. I wouldn't have said I was working at a football club. I probably would have said I would have, working in business or something because that's what seems appealing. But what's stuck with me is trying to stay in something that you're passionate about because that'll help you with the bad days. Like, for example, I can finish coaching uh, 9 o'clock and I can start coaching the next day uh, around 7. And it's not uncommon to have 15-hour days, and then then your own life starts to your personal life starts to suffer then because you're not seeing your family, etc. So knowing that you're passionate about it, that definitely helps dealing with those kind of tough days.
And then I've got one more question for you, and then we'll see if anyone else has got any other questions. What's like the most important lesson that you've learned so far in your career?
As a teacher and a coach, I'd say is to plan ahead, and it's always worth doing that extra bit of research to figure out what works and what doesn't, and definitely plan ahead. From teaching, I'm sure you always hear about teachers doing lots of planning, and it pays dividends because if you've got a plan and something goes wrong, you can adjust. If you haven't got a plan, something goes wrong, it's just down to luck then. So it's definitely better to plan ahead. So just basically just plan as much as you can, because things can and will go wrong.
They absolutely can. There's never a time where things can't go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had perfectly planned lessons. I've had Ofsted inspectors come in, and then the first kid comes and kicks a football, bounces off the inspector's head. I'm just sat there going, right, lovely. This is going to be a baptism of fire. But your planning, your experience helps you get through it.
Wow, that sounds like an interesting situation to deal with.
It's still fun though. It's still fun.
Yes.
That's the thing about sports. It brings people's characters up. So you tend to have a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you to Fred as well for coming on. Really appreciate your time. If you have any questions, if you're watching on YouTube and you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and we'll get those answered for you. Make sure that you check out all the other ones which are on our channel. Check out all the socials as well, which are in the description, and I'll put the Nottingham Forest Community Trust social media and website in the description too, so you can check that out. And hopefully we'll see you in the next one.